Chairman, we're now live. If I could just start the meeting actually by officially appointing a chairman for this committee. Could I ask if we have any nominations for the chair, please?
Yes, I nominate. Gosh, sorry, Liz. I nominate John Chesshire as chairman.
No, I'll second that, Liz.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other nominations? No, is that agreed then? Thank you. So, Chairman, if I can hand over to you to now to arrange for the nominations for Vice Chairman, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And in terms of nominations for Vice Chairman, I understand that Councillor Chamdall would like to stand for this position. Do we have a nomination, please?
I nominate.
And do we have a seconder?
Yeah, I second that.
Thank you, Councillor Batt. We now have a Vice Chairman. Thank you very much indeed. Congratulations. Is everyone in agreement? Is everyone happy with that decision? Lovely. Agreed. I'll move to Chairman's announcements then, our standard sort of introduction. Now that special business has been taken care of. A warm welcome to those attending and also to our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. This is a meeting of the Audit Committee. My name is John Chesshire and I am the Chairman of this meeting. Details of the business to be considered today is shown on the agenda, copies of which are accessible on YouTube underneath the broadcast. In terms of housekeeping, we're not expecting a fire drill, so if the fire alarm goes off or if Claire's phone goes off because she's on duty, I believe, this evening, please follow officers to the fire exits and out of the building to the designated meeting points. For those in the room, please switch any mobile devices to silent before the meeting starts formally. For those watching via YouTube, if you're so minded, you can complete one of our residents' feedback forms. These can be found in the information section underneath the YouTube video. These forms are intended to help us improve the way that we run our meetings. Let's move on to attendees and to any apologies for absence. We'll do the attendees first, and we always sort of introduce ourselves individually working round the room. So I'm John Chesshire, and I will be the chairman for the meeting.
Okay. Councillor Rita Chamdale.
Councillor Higgins.
Councillor Kishan-Batt.
Councillor Tony Bowles.
Helen Thompson, I'm the partner from Ernst & Young, your external auditors.
Clarissa Medoni, I'm the senior manager from Ernst & Young.
I'm Tony Zayman, the Chief Executive of the Council.
Stephanie Rayo, Internal Audit Manager.
Alex Brown, Head of Counter Fraud.
Yeah. Jack Francis Kent, Senior Internal Auditor.
Claire Baker, Head of Internal Audit and Risk Assurance.
Niti Joshi, Deputy Principal Lawyer.
Dan Kennedy, Corporate Director.
Andy Evans, Corporate Director of Finance.
James Lake, Director of Pensions, Treasury and Statutory Accounts.
And Liz Penny, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you very much indeed, and welcome to all of you to the committee, and it's nice to see some different faces here today as well. Welcome and thank you all for joining us. In terms of apologies for absence, Liz.
Yes, Chairman. So apologies have been received from Councillor Nick Dennis with Councillor Kishan-Batt substituting. I haven't received apologies from Councillor Nelson, but Councillor Bowles, are you able to confirm?
I'm sorry, I haven't heard anything.
So no apologies from Councillor Nelson.
Apologies, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We'll turn to agenda item 4 in respect of declarations of interest. Do any committee members have any declarations of interest that aren't registered already that they wish to cover off? Okay, thank you very much indeed for confirming that. Agenda item 5 is that I will confirm that all items marked in part 1 will be considered in public and that items marked in part 2 will be considered in private. Today we have one item under the part 2 agenda, so we'll be taking that separately and privately after the main body of the meeting. Agenda item 6 is the minutes of our last meeting, which we held on the 27th of April 2023. Thank you very much to colleagues for the minutes. If we can have a little glance through and just check that everyone is happy with the content and nature of the minutes. Page 5 is the first set of entries on the minutes. Page 6, page 7, 8, 9, these were comprehensive minutes at this time, 10, 11, and finally page 12. Okay, minutes accepted. Thank you very much again for those. Agenda item 7 is the EY update on accounts. James, if you could introduce this agenda item.
Thank you, Chair. I've got some good news. The audit has progressed well since the last meeting, now to the point where EY are able to issue their draft audit results report, which they'll go through with the committee. Also, just other progress. The capital receipts pooling certification was signed off by EY at the end of July, and we're very close to having the housing benefits certification signed off, hopefully by mid-August. So 21-22 is coming to a close, hopefully, in terms of the audit, but we've progressed well through the audit now, so we're at the point now where hopefully we should be able to sign off the accounts. So with that, I'll pass over to EY to go through their draft audit results report, if I may, Chair.
Lovely, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you also, James. So the other piece of good news to add to something that we have in fact completed is we have issued the audit certificate for 2020-21, which I appreciate feels like a very, very long time ago now, but we had to wait for the NAO to confirm that they weren't going to ask us to carry out any further work to support their statement on the whole of government accounts. So that has been issued and hopefully the notice published. So as the report indicates, and you have a separate report which I can see you've got to hand, setting out the findings from our audit, we are close to finalising the 21-22 audit. We issued the report on Friday, so there's not been a lot of progress to update you on since then. But to give you a bit of a flavour, we are working through our review processes and we're liaising with James and also with Andrew as we go to resolve any matters that are arising. We have also completed our value for money risk assessment and we have no matters to report. And in a moment I'll hand over to Larissa to take you through the key highlights, which will be in the executive summary of our report. But before I do so, I just wanted also to sort of confirm our plan to complete the reporting of the audit to you. So first of all, probably I said it in the pre-meeting, but to say in the full meeting as well, I will be leaving EY in mid-October. So I was initially intending to retire and actually take a bit of time to reflect, but actually I do have now an opportunity that I will be picking up in November. So I'm very keen that we try and complete the audit as much as we can before we go. So our plan is that we will update the audit results report, which is the document in front of you this evening, with the final conclusions from our audit, and we will circulate that to the members of the committee and arrange a meeting with the chairman of the committee. So you will get the report about a week before we expect to issue the audit opinion, to give you the opportunity to review it and to ask any questions of us, which will probably need to be through email, but that we will separately have a meeting with the chairman to take any questions, so that would be an alternative route for questions if you have them. But alongside that, we would also like to issue the draft reporting on value for money, so our VFM commentary, which is contained with the auditors within the auditor's annual report. By taking that approach, we will be able to conclude the audit effectively without being able to issue the certificate for the same reasons, the issues with the National Audit Office and the whole of government accounts, but before I leave the firm, which I think will make it a lot neater both for the council and actually indeed for us. So we discussed that a little bit earlier, and I think everybody's agreed that that seems a sensible way forward, but that's what we hope to do. And the reason for that is your next meeting is obviously after the date I've left, and an extraordinary meeting possibly isn't the right way forward. So that's, yeah, not really, if I'm honest. But So that's our plan. I will hand over to Larissa, who will just take you through the opening pages of our report, and then we're happy to take any comments or questions that you may have, members.
Thank you, Helen. I will start on page 5 of our report, and I will describe the changes in the scope to our audit, and the main change is a change in materiality. We had to reassess our materiality levels in light of the audit differences identified and reported and included in this report. The main difference that had an impact on the basis for our materiality is with regards to the Better Care Fund, which I will explain in a minute. Our planning materiality reduced by £1 million, as you can see from the table in front of you. This has implications on the extent of our testing, so we're currently doing an exercise to determine the extent of that impact. Moving on to page 7, I will describe the main audit differences we decided to report at this committee. We split the differences into 2 categories: those that we expect to stay unadjusted as per management decision, and those that we have agreed with management to adjust. However, we're still to see an updated set of accounts, which I understand is being worked on. The differences expected to stay unadjusted are the first 3 on this page. With regards to pension liability goodwill case, in the amount of £2 million understatement of pension liability. This is a recurring difference, and it's expected to recur in future periods until the case is resolved. With regards to property, plant and equipment valuation, again, a recurring difference between differences in opinion of valuation specialists from management side and our side. This amounted to £3.9 million overstatement in the current year. And the third one is not a recurring difference. It relates to prior year, and it's an overstatement of council dwelling values of 8.6 million due to additions in 2021 being valued on an incorrect basis at the reporting date of last accounting period due to revaluations taking place in the current accounting period that we're reporting on. With regards to the main differences that we expect to be corrected, I mentioned the impact of the Better Care Fund difference on the materiality. This amounts to 41.6 million, and it relates to the accounting treatment of income and expenditure related to the Better Care Fund arrangement, which means that our assessment was that income and expenditure was overstated in that amount because we considered that the council should only account for its own share of income and expenditure rather than accounting for the partners' share as well. The council assessed that there is no requirement to restate prior period comparatives in light of the accounting standard IS 8 due to the overall immateriality on the decisions of the users of the accounts of such a restatement. And our recommendation was to include additional disclosures in the accounts to explain the variance between income and expenditure movement from prior year on health and social care income and expenditure. The council accepted the proposal to be implemented. The second difference which we expect will be adjusted is an overstatement of debts and creditor balances related to Department for Works and Pensions in the amount of 25.3 million. It purely relates to a netting off of the balance which should be accounted on a net basis. The third is with regards to the triennial valuation for the pension liability that took place during the current calendar year, but it relates to March 22 date. So we had to take into account the results of the triennial valuation on the March 22 reporting. And that resulted in an understatement of the pension liability of 21.6 million, which management agreed to adjust in the accounts. We also listed a number of miscellaneous differences with regards to property, plant and equipment, accounting and valuation, and some control recommendations are also included in a later section of our report that link to these differences. With regards to the differences in disclosures, I only want to emphasize the infrastructure assets adjustments in disclosures. Following the national issue that we discussed in a number of committees, there was a change, an adaptation of the SIPFA code, and that resulted in a need to make some adjustments to the disclosures in the accounts. Moving on to page 9, I will walk you through briefly through the main risks we identified on the audit and our results or status of our work. With regard to our 3 fraud risks, we completed our work and it has been reviewed for the 2 specific risks around risk of inappropriate capitalization of revenue expenditure and inappropriate accounting for adjustments made in the movement in the reserve statement. Our general risk of management override has been addressed partially. It has been partially reviewed and it's on the final reviews. We have nothing to report as of this date with regards to these risks and our audit work carried out. With regards to the significant risk on valuation of land and buildings, I'd just like to emphasize that we have received the management assessment of assets not revalued in a year and management estimated an impact of 7.5 million on the statement of such assets. This is currently under our review, so we're not concluding on this at this date. Moving on to the next page, we completed our work with regards to most of the inherent risks on the audit, and these are valuation of council dwellings, consideration of group boundary, and accounting for COVID-19 government grants. The results are summarized on this page. There is no element I'd like to bring to your attention. Our work with regards to pension liability and going concern is under review, and we'll have to update our going concern procedures until we complete the audit. As I mentioned, there are some control observations. We have not identified any significant deficiencies in internal controls, but we are recommending certain improvements, especially around fixed asset accounting, and one recommendation with regards to documentation retention on key management judgments on complex accounting treatments. We consider that implementing such recommendations could improve the audit process going forward. And this brings me to the end of my summary, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Larissa, and thank you very much for getting us the draft audit results reports. Colleagues, any questions for EY or indeed for James or Andy on this? Councillor Higgins.
Forgive me because this is my... Oh, well, I was a sub last time. Now I'm actually on the committee. It's a bit more daunting. Is it normal for that to be such a loss of 8.6 million on valuation on social housing? I mean, surely it's a big amount.
It's indeed a good question. The valuation basis, according to the SIPFA code, is existing use value of social housing. That's what that's what the code calls it, and it only accounts for a portion of the market value of the properties, according to the accounting standards, and that's what is driving the large drop in value.
Thank you very much. Any other observations or questions? Again, I think we're sort of pleased that we're getting to the end of this process, as I'm sure that everybody else involved is. James, Andy, I guess there won't be any delays in supplying EY with those finalised accounts from your end to allow them to move forward.
No, not at all. It's just we just need to be happy that EY are happy with what the adjustments, and they've done their final checks, and we can just hash the accounts effectively and then provide the final version. So we've got the team sort of standing on standby, waiting to sort of just do that. And we've done 99% of them anyway. It's just a case of just those last few getting them over the line and agreed, and then we can just update the accounts and send them over.
So, Councillor Higgins.
Is hash a technical term?
It's a specialist accountancy terminology.
I've always been told when I'm facing someone of financial thing never to use the word hash.
I couldn't possibly comment. Sounds like a specialist accountancy term to me. Okay, so we're nearly there. I think there's no further questions from the committee. Good luck in the next few weeks in getting this over the line. And I suppose from the committee's perspective, very happy to meet and to engage. We're very happy to review when you are able to supply us with the paperwork. And we will liaise on diaries to make sure that the meetings happen between pieces of holiday time that I think various of us are having. And obviously it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, thank you very much for all your hard work during the time as partner for us, and we wish you all the very best of luck in your new role. And we're heartened to hear that Larissa isn't escaping and will ensure continuity between years in this process going forward. So thank you very much indeed for the report. Thank you all very much for the hard work that has got us to this stage. Final push now. Thank you very much. We'll move on to agenda item 8, annual report of the Audit Committee 2022 to 2023. And I think Claire will introduce this paper. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this draft Audit Committee annual report summarises the work of the Audit Committee from April 2022 until March 2023. This is a draft version for your approval, as this is your report summarising your opinion of the work of the committee. Once we make any updates based on your comments from this meeting, this will then be presented to Council once it's finalised. So please do let me know if you've got any comments or anything you disagree with. Like I say, it's your report.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much for drafting it for us. Colleagues, any observations, any questions, anything that you want clarified in the content of this report? It's getting the thumbs up from the committee. I had a look through. I was very happy with the report. As far as I'm concerned, it reflects our work and our position. So thank you. Paper is approved if approval is needed from us. Thank you for putting it together again one more time. Agenda item 9, the 2023-2024 Q1 Corporate Risk Register. Thank you. Stephanie, to introduce this paper. That was my next question. You preempted me. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this presentation refers to agenda item 9 of your papers, pages 27 to 32. This is the Corporate Risk Register for quarter 4 of the previous financial year and quarter 1 of 2023-24. And this was obviously because there was no risk register agenda item on the last committee meeting. It provides evidence to the committee about how risks have been identified, managed and mitigating actions in place. So if you turn to page 27, you will see a cumulative update of Q4 and Q1 as at the 30th of June. And then obviously the following pages 29 to 32 contain the detail behind it. So since the last Corporate Risk Register update at Audit Committee, and that was relating to the Q3 position, there's only one change that's been made on the register. Obviously, lots of subsequent updates in terms of mitigating actions. However, this relates to the coronavirus risk, which was retired at the end of quarter 4. So whilst it's acknowledged that pandemics can happen in the future, it's learning from obviously the COVID period and noting that it's time to retire it. We can always reintroduce it if and when we should need to. And during that period as well, there are no new corporate risks on the register. But if you do take a quick look at the detail of the register, you'll notice it looks a little bit different. We've moved away from the Microsoft Word version over to Excel. It's obviously easy to kind of sort, filter, update, and it's been replaced because it's in consultation with CMT and senior management as part of a wider piece, which I think we'll cover later on. So it's about part of our wider risk management approach and improvement work that we're doing at the minute. But if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Any questions? Councillor Chandler.
I have one, Stephanie. It might sound silly, I'm not sure. It's to do with the General Data Protection Regulations, and it says the risk arising from a minority of staff not complying with the Council's data protection. Just want to know, is it repeat offenders or is it a regular occurrence? Because it just takes one instance for us to be caught out.
I mean, I think the risk that's been framed there. It could be. It's not necessarily the residual risk. So just because obviously you're looking at the risk score methodology and you're looking at the financial impact and various different other impacts that the senior management look at how they score risks, the fine that our local authority could be given if we weren't compliant. I think the mitigating actions that have been put in place, we have a programme of training, mandatory training and follow-up training is built into the induction. So there's a lot of embedded activity that's there. So I know that there's monitoring there from learning and development. So in terms of repeat offenders, I think legal have controls in place to actually monitor any breaches, or even they call them incidents, and then they have a process in place so they report it to the ICO within a set period of time should they need to do so. And my awareness is that if that has ever happened, there's been positive feedback with the actions that have been undertaken by the council.
Just needed some reassurance on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got a question, and whether it's best to aim it at Andy or to you or to both of you. The relationship between risk number 10, inflation, and risk number 4, the balancing of the budget. I'm guessing the two are pretty closely linked, with the inflation leading to additional pressures on the first area. Do you see, I see inflation is marked as a kind of static, no change in that period. Do we feel that that's changing now?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're identified currently separately because, I mean, the inflationary pressures we're experiencing at the moment are exceptional. I think the worst we've had in 40 years. But obviously there's a degree of overlap in that those inflationary pressures will feed some of the challenges into balancing the budget. But they're not the exclusive factor, which is why currently inflation is on the corporate risk register, whereas in other periods, you might find it lower down the risk hierarchy, if you like, perhaps appearing on the finance register in certain areas, but at this point it's still presented as a corporate risk, a risk in its own right, alongside the balanced budget proposal. In terms of where inflationary pressures are going, I wish I could predict that, because it would make balancing the budget a lot easier. But I think given the volatility and the extent and variation in the forecasts we're going, that's why we've maintained it as a separate corporate risk at this point.
Okay, no, thank you. That makes good sense, and I think better to be prudent and have it captured separately for the time being. Okay, thank you very much for the update, and yeah, I'm sure we are. Well, we're certainly very interested in hearing about the developments on the risk management front, so we'll save those for the relevant spot in the agenda. Thank you, Stephanie. Agenda item 10, the internal audit progress report for Q1 of this year. Claire.
Yes, that's back with me. So this is, like say, the Q1 progress report outlining the internal audit work undertaken in Q1. We finalised 8 assurance reports, 2 substantial, 4 reasonable and 2 limited. And following request at the last audit committee meeting, we have included a summary for the 2 limited reports, which were related to IR35 and care leavers allowances. We also had 3 reports out in draft, and if you look at page 7 of the report, page 41 of the full pack, this outlines the audit plan and the detail of those reports. I've no concerns in terms of the ones that are out in draft with getting those finalised. The trading standards one, there's been a slight delay due to changes in responsible officers. Somebody new has come in and taken ownership for that. The findings have been agreed. It's just finalising the management sponsors, and because of annual leave, that's why it's taking a little longer. Within the forward plan of audits there, it is a flexible plan. This was never set as being, what we were going to do for definite for the rest of the year. So we are already making changes. So, for example, the mortuary review was brought forward. Parking income was moved back due to things going on in the services. So mortuary review was having an external inspection, so they asked us to come in earlier. And we've also added a review looking at budget monitoring alongside the savings programme audit. And these changes will be reflected in the next progress report. So it is really good engagement with the different directors in terms of making sure this is a flexible programme. As well as our assurance reviews, we've also done ad hoc consultancy into Section 1 and 6 funding. We've drafted the internal audit, the audit committee and the risk management annual reports, and also the annual governance statement for 22-23. And we've continued following up on the older management actions, and we've included a summary of that follow-up table within the progress report. This is a very high-level report because of the number of actions that we've been following up. More information will be included in future progress reports, outlining a bit more information in those overdue ones. We're marking things as being overdue if we hadn't got a response to say that they had been completed. So some of those overdue ones, because they're so old, it could be that somebody's changed role, changed position, somebody new's come in, there's been big service changes, so actually they may have been superseded. So I don't have major concerns with any of those yet. As we continue to not find anybody responsible, maybe we will do, but currently we're still following that up. We have had a lot of ongoing discussions in relation to some of them, and we'll report that back to the next meeting. Two in particular, the two oldest, corporate payments and community safety, they've both actually been superseded because there is wider changes, including Oracle projects, so they're going to be followed up in April 24, so they'll be taken off and then followed up again when they become due. We do have a new principal internal auditor in the internal audit team who's taken ownership for this, and we've set up a new tracker and putting in processes in place with our newly expanded team within internal audit to make sure that we're escalating any delays with getting those finalised through to CMT. We will also add any of the new actions from 22-23 audits into the tracker for the next committee. Finally, just following the last audit committee meeting, the external quality assessment that was done for the internal audit service, the report was shared following the committee as it was finalised after the papers were due. Just for completeness, I have included the actions from that report in the progress report, just so they're documented there. This was the actions as at the date of the report being finalised. I can now confirm all the actions have now been completed. And then finally, we've included the KPIs, which were agreed as part of our annual plan. These are all based on the 2023-24 work plan. So we are just starting that, and we've only just introduced the tracker in May to monitor completion of those. So we do expect improvement of those going forward. It's a new team, it's a new process, it's a new methodology for audit, so it'll take time to become embedded. That was all I was going to say on the progress report, unless there's any questions.
Thank you very much indeed for the report. Colleagues, any questions for Claire or the audit team on this? Councillor Batt.
Thank you, Claire. I note that on the IR35 audit, the Director of Procurement sort of taken ownership of that. But of course, if we're using contractors, to what extent have HR had an input in that?
So both procurement and HR were involved in the audit, and both of them signed off the actions together. One of the major findings was around ownership of this. So they selected who was going to take ownership for this and move it forward. So it wasn't, both assuming that the other one was doing it, and that's why it is. But yeah, definitely HR was involved in that.
Thank you for the clarification. In terms of staffing, a good result. You've managed to, I think, fully populate the team now in a environment that's very hard to both recruit and also to kind of appoint successfully. Can you remind the committee what the current structure of the team is at the present time?
Yeah, so there's myself as Head of Internal Audit. We have Steph as our Internal Audit Manager. We have a Principal Internal Auditor, John. We have a Senior Internal Auditor, Jack, who's attending the meeting. We then have 3 Internal Auditors, and we now have 2 Apprentice Internal Auditors who are starting the Internal Audit Apprenticeship.
Excellent. As I say, I mean, as the committee, we know that staffing has been one of the biggest challenges for the audit service for the last 18 months. It's tremendous that we now have a fully populated audit team, albeit one with different levels of experience, and the team will mature as time goes by. So good luck with that, and congratulations on filling the vacancies. You mentioned the external quality assessment, and thank you for sharing that outside of committee. I did enjoy reading it. I wondered whether in this report it would be worth, again, just for the audit trail, so to speak, including the result of the report in the committee paperwork as well. Got the actions, yes, but the fact that it was a partial conformance, now I guess with the actions complete, we can generally conform with the standards, and it's probably worth noting that too. In terms of follow-up of the outstanding sort of management actions, the committee will remember that this was paused for a number of months due to the staffing challenges within the service. And I guess it will take a little bit of time just to pick up the pace in this again. But from your perspective, and you mentioned it in the report that you provided, no particular areas of concern here. Bit of tidying up, bit of housekeeping, bit of cancelling superseded actions, but nothing that gives you particular concern at the moment. All right. Thank you for the clarification. In terms of the KPIs, early days, so yeah, we'll look, and I'm sure we'll see those move in the right direction as the team get their feet onto the table and everything. There's no other questions. Thank you very much for the update, and congratulations again for the recruitment and appointment successes. We'll move on then. Agenda item 11, the annual risk management report for last year. I guess we're going back to Steph, aren't we? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So again, this is agenda item 11 of your papers, pages 51 to 62. So this is the annual risk management report, and it's one of our statutory responsibilities to make sure our arrangements are in place at the organisation. So this report here outlines the key actions taken to promote and embed risk management during the financial year of 2022-23. So we have obviously the role of risk management, which pretty much remains unchanged. Section 3 over the next page talks about how we've embedded effective risk management in that year. There's a lot of ongoing programmes of work, such as the training, the risk management e-learning module, etc., and the risk champions in terms of the governance structure. Obviously, we've taken note that the corporate governance of risk management, there were a lot of appointments with, obviously, last year in 22-23, with a new leader of the council in 2021 and a new cabinet, so it's making sure that we have the training range of awareness of roles and responsibilities and such. And obviously we know that the council's constitution was remodelled and modernised to meet emerging risks and changing needs locally and to encompass new national legislation. Obviously, more close to home in internal audit, we have adopted a new 3-year IA strategy, which again is reflective of this new environment and risk landscape. So we continue to communicate the findings of our risk-based approach of limited and nil assurance reviews to corporate risk management group. And Section 4 talks about the corporate risk register, which is also part of our forward plan. So we, as you're aware, we've updated the corporate risk register and amalgamated it with the directorate risk registers. It's onto an Excel version, and it's a new template to improve collaboration between directorates to allow the movement from directorate to corporate, the up and down escalation, and if there's any change with directorate lines. So it's improved tracking of risks to ensure their updated consistency, and we're looking at potentially a risk management system, but it's obviously early days, and what we've undertaken recently is an independent review of risk management by Mazars, and we're working through the findings at the moment, or the draft ones basically, so we're just waiting for that to be finalised. But if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, any questions for Stephanie on the risk management annual report and the activity in last year in this space? Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, Stephanie, can you explain a bit more about why School Place is still in C1? Yeah, you've got a graph here. Maybe I've misread it. It's got the CR risk. Oh, I've got my glasses on, I can't see it, but I think I'm there. It's got Heathrow housing needs, children demand, soundtrack.
Would you mind saying what page it's on?
Oh, sorry, I'm on 56. Sorry, I'm on a computer.
Okie dokie. So this is the monitoring review of the corporate risks over that financial year.
That's what I'm trying to say.
And your question being, sorry?
About School Places, because obviously we've been building new schools and we've been told that everything is fine there, and that here is still in red.
Well, the detail of that would be in the main corporate risk register, and we can have a quick...
That's what I'm just trying to find out why.
Chairman, I'm happy to jump in if that's a
little update. Obviously, it's more suited to the previous quarter update report. But where are we on that, Dan?
So in terms of School Places, obviously, Councillor Higgins is right. We've got a very strong track record in this borough of ensuring every child has a school place on time, every time. And that continues to be our ambition. We are seeing a rising level of demand for places, particularly amongst the SEND, Special Educational Needs Group, and that's really where our risk is. There is some residual risk around, a smaller level of risk around secondary school places, which we're managing, and in primary we're actually seeing a small drop in roles. Still quite high in terms of demand, but we are seeing a slight drop. So it's mainly focused around the special educational needs places.
Thank you, Chairman. Then isn't it better for us then to actually be more specific about that risk? Because it is misleading.
We can certainly take that away.
Because then it will tie up better with what the council strategy.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the clarification. Any questions about the annual report and the content of this? I've got a couple of questions, if I may. Page 55, para 3.6.3, and it's something that I, thought about previously, but I don't think I know the answer. When it comes to internal audit reports and the findings within the internal audit reports, you highlight that the reports themselves go to the CRMG for discussion. Do we then move maybe risks that audit have identified that are not being currently well managed onto the relevant departmental risk registers? Does that flow through occur?
So it's usually a summary of the findings of the nil and limited assurance reviews, and they are an agenda item on the corporate risk register, on the CRMG, and so they are up for discussion as to what are the risks, are there themes, is it something that was one incident that can be addressed and there's already been mitigated, or there's work that's underway that's going to close off that recommendation quite quickly? Is there an underlying problem, and if so, that's where this discussion is generated at the meeting. So sometimes it can feed into a risk, or it can be a new risk.
Okay, no, thank you for that. Helpful. Page 56 in para 5.1.2. I think you probably remember last year when I asked a very similar question, and we have this aspiration to further mature risk management. And of course, we don't have to have a platinum-plated version or even a gold-plated version. Have we got a kind of action plan or a roadmap yet to to move us to this next level of maturity? Claire?
Yeah, so this is one of the main priorities, I think, for this year, is looking at our risk management, completely refreshing the way that we do it. And it's about making sure that all the way down to an operational level within services are taking responsibility for the risks in their area, and that we have a clear process of escalating those risks up to the corporate risk register if they are significant risks, and how things from a corporate level go all the way down to operational, and making sure that we have actions that are smart actions with timescales, responsible officers for individual actions, and we can track those. And one of the things we're looking at is risk management software, which allows more access for people and different ways that you can extract data. You can extract information on people using the system and updating their risks, not just reporting what the risks are. So there is a project card in relation to risk management. There is a lot of things on there, includes updating the policy, training, raising awareness, engaging with staff around that, looking at the software. So yes, there's a very detailed action plan.
Excellent, and good luck with those initiatives. Just a kind of very random point, but risk management software. Have you explored how you can use SharePoint to act as a kind of front end to the Excel spreadsheets that you've been developing?
Yes. So one of the reasons we moved to the Excel was to improve the access to them. So it is all centralised in one Excel document that is on SharePoint. So it means that I can track who's logging into them and who's made changes, which is very handy compared to the Word document. And also we're looking at ways that we can make easier access, from the front end of SharePoint, links into the risk software or into the risk register, so people have it, daily to look at.
Fantastic. Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, any other questions before we move on? I did, have one additional question, if I may. Page 60, on the, Andy, the Finance Directorate Risk Register. Having listened to Alex regularly talking about the increase in fraud due to the cost of living crisis and other pressures on individuals, I see the kind of increased level of fraud kind of static. It's a kind of high likelihood. Are we almost at the point where this is an issue rather than a risk? We're seeing an increased risk of fraud. We're seeing an increased reality of fraud, and not just a risk.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's some of it's a function of the economic circumstances we find ourselves in, I think, and increasingly, the choice that Alex faces is where he goes, where he should prioritise. It's we've got more work than resources to tackle it with at the moment. So we have made some responses to that at an operational level. So there's a bit of flexibility within the structure of the fraud team to enable us to respond. I think the other aspect of this, which sort of links back to your previous point, is in terms of risk management, more closely linking the audit approach and the fraud approach. So we're developing a joint approach to risk management across the two teams, and the collaboration between the two teams in tackling issues and emerging issues that come out of the internal audit work. It may well get to the stage when we look at refreshing the risk management position that we will move that on. And again, you don't know what you don't know, because we're going into some new areas where we're discovering new types of fraud. Fraud moves on, but also I think we're looking across the piece. There is some collaborative work, London-wide work that Alex may pick it up in his report a bit later on, but that's also an important aspect of frauds, because a fraud happening in one other borough is likely to be repeated elsewhere as well. So there's a number of aspects to that. But certainly we'll look at the scoring of the risk when we next refresh the programme.
Lovely, thank you. I think no further questions from the committee. Thank you very much for the report, for the update, and for the sort of snapshot of where we are with the Directorate Risk Registers as well. We see that sort of once a year, and it's always good to have that refresh. We'll move on to the next agenda item then, which is agenda item 12, the internal audit annual report. It's like tennis, so it's back to you then, Claire. Thank you very much.
Yes. So the internal audit annual report simply summarises the work of internal audit undertaken during 2022-23. It also includes the overall head of internal audit opinion, which was reasonable assurance for the year. Despite significant vacancies and reliance on our third-party provider, Mazars, during the year, we did actually manage to complete, I was not here for most of it. The team managed to complete, Steph and Jack.
Credit, you're in the seat now.
Managed to complete 39 pieces of work, including 27 assurance reviews, which was really good. That's a very high number. 89% of those assurance reviews received substantial or moderate assurance, which is really good, which also led to the decrease in the number of management actions that were raised in the year. It is very positive, having a lot of substantial and reasonable assurance reports. I would say that is consistent with having a third-party provider. Before you get too excited that this is going to be an onward trend, it is far more high level. That's just the nature of their work. So don't expect it to be as good. I'm sure it will be as positive this year, but we're far more risk-based in this year's plan, so we do expect to see more limited or no assurance reports or more consultancy reviews due to the nature of our work. But yeah, any questions?
Thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, any questions on the annual work plan, the delivery from the Internal Audit Service and the report here? I mean, I must admit I was pleased and probably pleasantly surprised in a way at the volume of work that was completed by year end, particularly given the staffing challenges that you faced throughout the year. And I think Mazars have played their role in assisting with that, and we've paid them for it. But I think the depth of work that the in-house team will be able to do going forward may well lead to slightly more challenging discussions in places with management and slightly more debate over levels of assurance and agreed actions. It's all part of the healthy role that we carry out. So congratulations on that delivery success in a very difficult year. Congratulations again on kind of refreshing and populating the team. I had a couple of questions, if I may, on page 71 on the kind of the performance, particularly the last paragraph. And I wondered whether you could just maybe talk us through this a little bit, because those survey results, looked slightly concerning to me, and I wondered how you felt about it, being fairly fresh in the seat, and what takeaways you have from those results.
So this survey was undertaken as part of the EQA and reported through there. I mean, it didn't surprise me in terms of people saying that we didn't have the necessary resources. I totally agree with that. And actually, only a small number said that they didn't think that internal audit was valued, and it's something with having an external provider in. It is a different relationship, and it potentially did impact on the relationships that we have with management, with directors, because we weren't there to be as proactive, engaging, because it was an external provider. I'm confident that we'll have better figures. We're already seeing good returns in our client feedback questionnaires that we're getting for our audits. So it doesn't concern me with the survey results that we received.
Okay, and the benefit of the in-house team, of course, is you'll get to know people. They'll get to know you. You won't have to ask the basic questions that I'm guessing some of our external colleagues had to ask when they came in. It's a good report and a good year's performance, considering everything that you and your predecessors had to work through. And it's good to have you along to provide some stability in the leadership role. So good luck from the committee in terms of the year ahead in maturing the team and its approach. Keep up the good work. Thank you. We'll move on. Agenda item 13, the Counter Fraud Progress Report for Q1 this year. Alex.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to take the committee through the 23-24 Q1 Council for Progress Report, which starts on page 79 of your packs. The team has picked up from where it left off last year and has achieved another £1.8 million in savings during Q1. The team has mainly focused its efforts around the fraud risks within housing, recovering 27 properties due to tenancy fraud, which is the most we've ever achieved in one quarter. The risk of tenancy fraud will certainly remain high for some time to come, and this is demonstrated by the team's caseload, which is currently at 127 live investigations. The unprecedented demand on housing for assistance due to homelessness has led to an increase in the need for emergency accommodation, and the team have been working very closely with the housing services to residence check all emergency accommodations to ensure it's being used appropriately. So far, we've closed 4 cases worth £33,000, and this project is ongoing, and further outcomes will be reported at the next committee meeting. In social care, we've identified financial savings totalling £106,000 across a variety of service areas, including financial assessments, Section 17 and special guardianship orders. We also took part in the National Blue Badge Day of Action. This is the first time this has ever happened, and 82 councils attended the day and tackled misuse. The day was really successful. We actually seized 10 badges for misuse, and those cases are now ongoing. Also within Blue Badge, the team has prosecuted a resident for using a blue badge that was of a deceased resident, and during the court case, the offender received a fine, a victim surcharge, and full costs to the council of £2,900. So the committee have obviously heard me talk a lot about the increased risk of fraud over the last 18 months, particularly with due to COVID and the cost of living crisis, and obviously that's had a huge effect on the service and our workload. So earlier in Q1, Andy and I reviewed the structure and looked at the resourcing required for the service moving forward for this year, and I'm pleased to agree that a new structure was agreed at CMT, and that includes additional posts of counter fraud manager, a counter fraud investigator, and 2 apprentices. Recruitment is going really, really well, and I expect to be fully staffed by the end of August. So that's all for me. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, and very positive outcome then to the ongoing recruitment. Thank you for the update. Colleagues, any questions for Alex on the fraud update? Then I'll maybe begin, and you certainly appear, and your team appear to have picked up exactly where you left off at the end of the previous year, and we'll hear more about that shortly. Remind me, what targets were set again for you? 5 million, and we're at 1.8 already. We'll have to revisit that target setting methodology again for next time. No, I mean, I think it paints the picture that you've described of increasing levels of fraud. 127 cases on the property front, and how many of your team are kind of devoted to that part of the portfolio?
So officially within the structure 4, but in reality, obviously we're deploying far more resources into that area. It's obviously high on the agenda with CMT at the moment with Dan, etc. So yeah, everything we've got is basically going into housing at the moment. Okay,
thank you. And did I, just to confirm my understanding, did you say 4 new posts in fraud, or is that 4 replacements?
So what I will do for the committee is at the next meeting, I will have an updated structure chart in the back of the progress report for you all to see.
No, that's helpful, thank you. We sometimes lose track, my brain's small, of the movement in positions. On the social care front, this sort of but you commenced the sort of focus on this area as well last year. Are you finding the sorts of frauds that you expected when you initiated that sort of set of work? I mean, I suppose, is it going as expected? Is the
interesting question. I suppose yes and no is the answer to that. So we've had real positive engagement from social care, which has been a huge plus. So we've got into areas maybe that I didn't think we would. So, there's a lot of talk about special guardianship order payment within the report, which was highly unusual for us. I think the financial assessments and the direct payments and the Section 17 work is what I would expect, and most boroughs are feeling the same. There's been quite a lot in the press about certain cases over the last 6 months. We're kind of fighting social care fraud with one hand behind our back at the moment, just due to some regulatory issues of processing social care data for the purposes of fraud. The Cabinet Office are leading the charge to sort that out. So watch this space over the next 12 months for that.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned one other thing there that I was interested in. I'm not sure how much you can talk about it here, but the investigation that you had into the special guardianship orders. You mentioned it on page 85 of the report. Is there anything sort of else that you can tell us about this? And is this a very rare sort of isolated case, do you think, or the tip of an iceberg?
I can't say too much because the criminal side is actually still live at the moment and the decision has been made. But
whatever you feel comfortable in saying.
Yes, so I would say that it's unusual. This is one of two cases. There is a second case that we're dealing with, which will be in the next progress report. And I've been talking to social care, and there doesn't seem to be any other incidences of this. So we think these are one-offs from what we've seen.
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate the sensitive nature of it. Councillor Burley's first.
Thank you, Chairman. Just out of interest, really, the housing fraud. It's interesting that you're getting more and more cases of it. Where do you get most of your tip-offs from? Do they come from members of the public, or...?
No, it's a really good question. So it's a mixed bag. We get a lot from the public. We've got more from the public since COVID, and I actually think that's because a lot of people work from home. So there's a lot more people, obviously, in their neighbourhoods during the week, understanding what's going on because they're not out 9 till 5. Also, staff as well. We get a lot from staff, particularly in housing. Quite a lot of referrals from both from housing management and the homelessness side. It's a bit of a mixed bag, really.
Thank you very much. Councillor Higgins was next.
Thank you, Chairman. You said that you're focusing just on you've got these other cases going on, but most of your involvement is focusing on housing. How long do you reckon that programme will take? I mean, it's got at some point that we've only got so many houses. I know things change in different places, but how long is that going to go on before you can start hitting the other areas that there is definitely pockets of money to make your 6 million, 8 million, whatever?
I think, all our work is completely based on risk. So it's whatever the highest risk is to the organisation, and at the moment it's the housing fraud risk. So I think it's in terms of value for money and what's required for the organisation to function, it's best that we continue to focus our efforts there. Obviously, we're still working in other areas such as revenues and social care. But what we can look to do is if the fraud risk within housing starts to obviously fall, then we can reprioritise and look at other areas in the future. But I think the risk with the COVID, the economic crisis is here for a while.
Thank you very much. Councillor Batt.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Alex, for the report. Unfortunately, fraud's constantly evolving and it's fast-paced and moving forward. How do we keep up with the sort of pattern and the trend forward before it gets kind of to certain areas? I know you kind of rely on the NFI, but do you do anything else to kind of keep pace with the trends that are taking place?
Yeah. So a lot of it is obviously you can see the trends from looking at the risks. So when you understand the risks within a service, then you can identify obviously where the frauds could happen. Another way through it is sort of all of London talking together. So there's the London Borough Fraud Investigations Group. All the boroughs sit or have representatives that sit on that. I'm very lucky I actually have 3 people that sit on the exec committee. So there is a lot of transfer of intelligence, shall we say, between the management teams across London about what new risks are coming out, what's the highest risk within their borough at the moment. So yeah, that's sort of how we're keeping on top of things.
Thank you. Any other questions, colleagues? Okay, thank you very much for the report, Alex. I know the team are working incredibly hard. You're all working incredibly hard, so congratulations on an excellent first quarter. In a way, it's one of those strange things. We kind of, in a way, like to see less results rather than more. But in the environment that we're operating in, the risks that you're addressing, keep up the good work, team, and congratulations on an excellent first quarter. I suppose there's going to be more praise after this, and we'll get onto that in a minute. But agenda item 14, is the report from last year and the work that you and the team carried out in the previous financial year. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yep, I'd like to take the committee through the 22-23 Council Fraud Annual Report, which starts on page 95 of your packs. So the annual report is a look back on last financial year and everything that's been reported to the committee relating to counter fraud. The report also gives a statistical view of the year in terms of its activity. The report's quite large, as the committee may have noticed, so I'll just go through some of the headlines and the key points for the committee. So the team achieved £12.3 million in savings across the year, predominantly in housing, revenues and social care, against the target of £3.5 million. That included recovering 84 council properties due to tenancy fraud, closing 24 emergency accommodation placements due to non-occupation, saving £193,000. In social care, we identified savings of over £235,000, which was an 11% increase on the previous year, and the majority of these savings were in Section 17 direct payments and financial assessments. Our revenue maximisation work identified businesses that were undeclared for rates or that showed an increase in rateable value, which led to billings issued of nearly £6 million from the council, and the council retained 15% of that income. The on-site immigration officer achieved an increase of 202% compared to the year before, and they actually achieved £233,000 in savings. And this is where the immigration officer has identified applicants that aren't actually eligible to support due to their immigration status. Also wanted to highlight appendices E and F. So in E, there is the benchmarking for the previous year. So it's actually going back 2 years because, of course, all annual reports for last year are currently being reported to the committees as we speak. And also Appendix F that gives you, the committee, a bit of a snapshot of some of the comms that we've sent out over the last year to our residents. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed for an informative narrative report and for the verbal briefing. Councillor Higgins.
Well done, but where does the money go? That's what I want to know. Show me this audit, so I'll be over to you, Andy, I suppose. So all that money saved, I mean, obviously, I suppose you were balancing out with the extra staff that you're employing, but does it go into the balances, or do you put it in your slush fund for Barbados?
I wish. As you'll see from the two reports, quite a large quantum of the money that's saved is denoted as notional savings. So it's not actual cash returning to the council. It's reducing, for example, in housing, it's managing some of the demand that we're experiencing in that area. So tenancy fraud frees up council housing that then we can move people in from the waiting list in that otherwise we wouldn't have available. So a large element of that is that, unfortunately, on business rates, for example, where we had some big returns last year, and a lot of those are one-off, we only get a very small proportion of that because it goes back to the government. But nevertheless, it helps our bottom line and helps us with balancing the budget, as you know, which is a massive challenge for us at the moment. But yeah, a large quantum of that is a notional saving, so it's not cashable as such, but nevertheless, it helps us manage that bottom line. And as you can see, our relative performance to other councils, as shown in the report, justifies having the slightly larger than average counter fraud team that we have.
Can I follow up, please?
Yes, of course. Thank you.
So that's brilliant, but obviously you're focusing on housing, so I can understand you're measuring it differently. But is there other elements that where we can actually get some real money that would justify maybe having an even bigger team in that department?
Yeah, I think as Alex has explained, we're constantly reviewing the resource allocation within the team, whether we should be employing additional resource, whether there's a business case for that. As I say, we've recently taken on potentially 3 additional posts over and above our previous establishment with an aim to that. I think the area where we'd be looking to perhaps develop or probe a bit further is social care, where we know there's very, very large sums of money. And again, I would expect an element of that to be cost avoidance or non-cashable, but there may well be some returns to the council, such as the SGO case that we've seen, where we will be able to reclaim that money.
Through you, Chairman. Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant, and I think, considering social care is probably our biggest budget, it would be sort of worth you knocking up a business plan tonight, probably, and see whether that could be put forward to Cabinet to suggest that might be an area for us to see where we could save even more money. So.
Thank you very much indeed. Any other questions or comments on the report or the brief? You've kept us appraised of progress throughout the year, so none of this is a surprise. But when you see some of the stats and the sums and the performance against the KPIs and all of that, it's a terrific year's performance for the team. I do kind of like the idea of spending to save, and I think for the time being it feels like one of those areas that is very much worth investing in. When it gets a little bit harder, and when it's proving more difficult because we've scared people away from committing these sorts of things, then you can have a reappraisal. But for now, it feels like a no-brainer, for argument's sake. The communications as well that you have launched during the course of the year. I did read those again, remember some of these, and I thought, once again, really good. It sends out a powerful message to everyone, both through the communications but the successes that the team have. So a busy year, a hard year, I'm sure, for all of you, but the results speak volumes. So congratulations on an excellent year's performance. Keep up the good work. Thank you. We'll move on then. Agenda item 15, which is the last of the part 1 agenda items. Liz.
Yes, I don't really have anything particularly to say on the work programme. It was just really if there were any comments or anything from the members in relation to that, please, Chairman. Any questions or points? Just to note, we've got the dates, they've been agreed for a while, and I think the agendas have been sort of fixed and enlarged, I think correct, for the time being. At some point we'll need to talk about future meeting dates as well, of course. Okay, if there are no questions or observations about that, then we'll move to closing part 1 of the meeting formally. If we can begin to shut that down online. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon and evening. Thank you very much from the committee. Done.